So Maximizer's having a bit of a rough season. Today, we're going to be analyzing why some of my fights have gone off the rails. Okay, so this video ended up being more complex than I expected. So every once in a while, I'm just going to jingle and the engineering principles behind September's much more controlled performance. So let's start with some fundamentals. For those of you who are new, a Thagomizer style of robot is a style of robot that has a horizontal spinner and uses a swing attack to reach vulnerable parts of its opponent. My take on the project is adding as much angular speed and inertia as possible to deliver a devastating power shot to my opponent. Instead of going flying like a traditional horizontal, my angular momentum keeps me pinned to the floor. This has worked well for me so far, but it's still such a new concept that I learn new things every time I run the robot. Last year, I introduced a 90-degree bevel gearbox to the weapon drive. The biggest benefit to this system is more torque per gram than any off-the-shelf motor with a similar form factor. I've been running it since November of last year, and it's just been foolproof during fights. Other than spinning up Maxicopter. The one time it's failed was spinning up Maxicopter, and that is my own fault. The bevel gear has come with an unexpected trade-off. That is, I can't swing from the right without doing a really crazy dance. This might not seem like a super big deal, but Maximizer relies on box control to determine the pace of the fight and really control its opponents. On top of that, as soon as it rolls over, it's in a really bad position to take weapon-on-weapon impacts. When the blade is low to the ground, most of the impact is isolated to the horizontal plane. But when the blade is turned upside down, I'm in the perfect position for a vertical spinner to punch the blade and apply an extremely high torque to the frame of the robot. This contributed to my blade being decapitated by Amphisabana. The moment that I really knew that this was a major problem was being cage side at NHRL teams. I remember saying to Jaren, I can't believe it, it won't land on the right side. For a bot with two sides, it was always on the wrong side. It was so consistent, I was able to use it as an advantage when I fought king size. But this is the only time where it's come in helpful, so I need to get rid of this effect. But with as many rotational forces as what's going on in this problem, I can honestly say that this is more complex than my Masters of Engineering thesis. In taking on this project, I was way over my head, so I went to go find background research, and I went to the best place I could go.
My name is Warren Erav. I'm a high school physics teacher, currently coach a middle school FLL team, and I coach FTC team with Jacob Hoffman on it. He was my physics student in high school, and so he got in contact with me to see if I could help him troubleshoot this.
I stand.
Stamped.
Stand.
With Mr. Erath on the case, he identified two major causes for this behavior. Part 1 is angular momentum. The equation for angular momentum is I times W, where I is the moment of inertia and W is the angular velocity. This equation is analogous to linear momentum, which is equal to mass times velocity.
And that vector, the easiest way to get the direction is just take your right hand and curl your fingers and that the tip of the blade is rotating around, and then stick out your thumb.
As the bot is turning with the rotation of the blade, the angular momentums add, increasing the stability. As the bot spins against the blade, these angular momentums subtract, decreasing the stability. As the sum of the bot and the blade's momentum approaches zero, the system becomes increasingly unstable and subject to external forces. If you've ever driven a horizontal spinner, you know this effect quite well. It's lovingly referred to as the horizontal thing. What would be the linear mechanics analogy to?
If you're on a boat, so if you're on a small boat or stand-up paddleboard or something on the water, and you walk toward the nose of the board will go back the other direction.
But what's fascinating is most horizontals need a couple rotations before they get up to speed. For example, in this video of dysfunction, Ben has to floor it before he gets enough speed to cancel out the angular momentum. But Maximizer doesn't need multiple rotations to cancel these vectors. The tail and the speed are both so great, I can cancel them in almost 180 degrees. Running the numbers, the bot itself has more angular momentum than the blade, even though the blade is at 8,500 RPM and the bot is only at 300. When I did this math, it just kind of proved everything that I had been theorizing about the extreme power shot that I can apply with the Thagomizer style of robot. Part 2, counter torque. So this is where the rubber really meets the road as far as why Maximizer is different than traditional horizontals. Traditional horizontals will tend to reach an equilibrium point where the gravitational force is over the wheels such that they're stable on their side.
Yeah, I've been watching BattleBots. There was one, and shoot, the guy's name was Ray. Yeah, right. And his bot with the giant spinning blade that every once in a while, like, men got up on its side where the blade was hitting the ground. It'd just toss itself all over the place and he couldn't hardly recover from it.
Maximizer wasn't hitting this equilibrium though. It was going up on its side and then immediately slamming itself over.
Once it starts to roll, your counter torques get smaller and smaller because that rolling is shortening your lever arm. That was one of the things that made me think that it was possibly just due to the motor torque, is that once it started to go, it just went. Vertical spinner bots, when they'll rotate real quick, they'll pop up on a wheel, but they'll be kind of stable in that configuration. Like good drivers can kind of drive them on one wheel and everything like that. Whereas yours, there was just no way to stop it once it started.
Newton's third law of motion is that for every force, there's an equal and opposite reaction force. For example, if you push against a wall, the wall is pushing back. When I added the 90-degree gearbox, because the motor is applying a torque, the robot is experiencing an equal and opposite reaction. To demonstrate this reaction torque, we can put the robot on a string and start the motor. The tail is rolling in the opposite direction that the motor starts in. This effect is enhanced by the fact that Maximizer's long and narrow. So with Mr. Erath's help on this very difficult to analyze situation, we identified some major changes that we can make to increase the stability. Instead of being aligned with the axis with the lowest moment of inertia, the torque is aligned with an axis that has a much higher moment of inertia. The reduction in torque along the short axis means that the robot will be much less prone to roll when the torque is applied. I don't want to get rid of all the torque though, because it's a very cool trick to be able to spin and then automatically self-right. I ultimately decided to design it with the motor at an angle to reduce the amount of torque, but not get rid of it completely. The second thing that I did was I pushed the motor lower in the frame. After taking a look at the CAD, the only place where I could find asymmetry about the motor placement was it was 2 millimeters above the center of mass. So I pushed it to be 2 millimeters below the center of mass to see if this would help bias it to one side or another. But Mr. Erath pointed out that when the robot's in the air, it's rotating about its center of mass, so this distance shouldn't matter. I didn't change how much torque is applied because I changed which side the radius was on. So from this theoretical standpoint, this might not be biasing the robot to one side or another. But in the case for moving this down, it reduces the torque arm on the base of the wheel. Does it even do that? This is hard. Oh, this is so hard. Does it do that? I'm checking my work right now because I don't even know if I'm right about it. Dude. Oh. Okay. So Mr. Erath responded. The case for moving the motor lower in the frame doesn't actually have to do with the center of mass. Rather, it has to do with the reaction torque against the ground. The farther the torque of the motor is from the wheel's contact point, the less reaction force is required to keep the bot from rolling. On stationary level ground, the vertical placement doesn't matter. But as soon as the robot goes up on its side, the torque applied by the reaction force decreases because of the shorter moment arm perpendicular to the reaction force. With the motor placed lower in the frame, the rotation about the center of mass is subject to a higher reaction torque, which keeps the bot level. So Mr. Erath and I are kind of on the fence if this vertical motor placement is affecting things. So if you have a thought one way or the other, let me know. I will do my best to stand off the motor and change its vertical placement to see if that biases it to one side or the other. There's theoretical reasons why it shouldn't. There's theoretical reasons why it should. So we can try that out and provide maybe some experimental result. So comment where you fall on this debate. Does it matter? Does it not matter? Where should the motor be placed in the chassis? Oh, jeez. It just keeps getting more complex. So with these two changes identified, I was very concerned about the effectiveness. In combat, it's pretty often where you only compete 3 or 4 times a year, so you need to do a lot of changes really quickly. When ranking how effective these changes are, sometimes it's 0% effective, sometimes it's 100%. Going into this design, I was hoping for something in the 70% range, and I'd be unhappy with anything below 30%. But I'm uncertain enough, I wanted to build a prototype to confirm that we were on the right track. So I took one of the original Maximizer tails from January of 2023. I put the tail on the mill and I grooved the new asymmetric belt path. And I hooked up a angled motor mount. With my freak prototype, I took it to my good friends at Growing Stems and the Hive.
Okay.
Yeah? What do you think?
It's cool.
What was that noise? Yeah. So it's weight, it'll do it. But you hear it? What's your name? Xander. Nice to meet you, young man. My name's Jake. And your name? Maxwell. Nice to meet you. Well, do you know this robot's name?
Maximizer.
It is very close to
Maxwell.
Maxwell. It felt so great to drive, and I was totally invested in this change after driving it. The new tail design features an asymmetric placement of the motor that takes the angle to 25 degrees. This reduces the torque about the axis by sine of 25, or total X torque reduction of 57%. Plus, it's asymmetrical now, and it looks so cool. It's so unique. I love it so much. With the new tail design, I took it to 1819 Innovation Hub, and I machined it on the Haas Super Mini Mill. I do these tails in 2 operations. Setup 1 is being bolted down to a fixture plate, and then setup 2 is bolted down with a positioning pocket and a plate of aluminum. This allows me to machine both sides without resetting my 0 position between sides. With the tail machine, there's nothing left to do but to take it to Norwalk Havoc September event. Just give it a shot. My first fight is against Kazaa III, a flamethrower robot, which is not great because all of the wonderful changes I made are covered up in gold foil tape.
Can take some pretty massive hits, and it's gonna have to because it's going up against Jake Hoffman and the brand new, all new and all optimized Maximizer.
He's donning his gold flame armor right now. But thick front armor against Maximizer, it's something.
So the very first hit, I was like, oh my gosh, it went up and it landed down. It was so cool to see. It was like everything that I had worked on for like 3 months, like paid off in that exact moment.
That's a pin!
But then I took a nasty and really chaotic impact here and I landed upside down. Thought to myself, okay, the problem's not totally fixed.
On Maximizer, one of their downfalls in this tournament is that they are constantly, flipping over like that, getting inverted.
You can see me then desperately trying to get back over here by rotating in the opposite direction. And unfortunately, it's too stable. But as soon as the stability is broken by getting body slammed by Kaza, the robot goes up in the air and it comes right back down on its feet. It's like magic. Immediately after this, my blade breaks. I welded it back together after Amphisabena broke it back in April just to try to get some more life out of it. But I ended up being able to hit him hard enough that it just snapped the welds. So my new super stable robot is getting a heck of a test in this first fight because I have a blade instability well outside the normal range. But hey, working outside of normal operating conditions is all combat robotics is about. The new dynamics of the robot are so stable that even with this extreme vibration, as soon as the motor torque is applied, the robot slams itself down. So I think the motor counter torque is doing 2 things. The first thing is that it's throwing the nose of the robot down into the ground. This keeps the blade from sinking in and flipping it over to the wrong side. The second thing that happens is the reduced counter torque is able to roll the bot back over in a more gentle and controlled manner. So I did get turned on my head once against Blue Marlin, but after looking at this impact, I think something is different about all the others, and that is the blade doesn't hit the ground. Because the blade isn't being restricted, the motor doesn't apply any torque, so it doesn't have the chance to wrench the robot back around and down. Beyond just before and after impacts, the robot is so much more stable when just driving around. I was able to hit offside shots, which is something I haven't been able to do since August of last year. Just take a look at this massive impact I'm putting into Blue Marlin with the pushing side of the blade. I'm so happy with the driving on the robot the entire day. Super controlled, way better paced. A massive, massive thank you to Mr. Erath for identifying this torque issue and taking a look at, again, more complex angular mechanics than my Masters of Science thesis project. There are so many rotational forces here, and then you add the chaos of the impact on top of that. It is very hard to accurately predict how this robot is going to move. Each of these clips in isolation looks like extreme luck, and I think that's what's amazing about all of this. I think one of the coolest moments in design is when all the rules and preconceptions disappear and the work is forgotten in the face of something unbelievable. How will Maximizer do at NHRL Finals? We'll see.
Baby, now I got the flow, 'cause I know it from the start.